At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. Hands that hold our sport to a higher standard, not for our sake, but for theirs, for the love of the horse, for generations to come.
Think horse racing is too complicated? Think again.
And they're off!
Every pro was a newbie once. Meet DRF Newbie, the mobile tool loaded with daily racing form data and the power of DRF AI.
What a shocker!
Get the insights you need fast so you can play smarter and feel more confident. DRF Newbie, horse racing made simple. Try it free today. Visit newbie.drf.com.
NYTV membership is your inside track to the ultimate New York thoroughbred racing experience. Free race day entrance to Belmont, Saratoga, Aqueduct, and Finger Lakes. A liaison with NYS Breeding and Development Fund. A voice in Albany working with legislators to help support the New York breeding and racing industries. Along with tons of member benefits, discounts on services and publications, educational programs, and so much more. Join today at nytbreeders.org/membership.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2026 Virtual Thoroughbred Owner Conference Series. And I'm Gary Falter with the Jockey Club. And this is the second of 10 panels in our series of webinars that take place this year. And today's panel topic is something you may have heard about or read about, and it's sensor and stride and gait technology. So we have three speakers that we'll introduce here in a moment that are very well versed in this technology, and it's going to be interesting to hear what they have to say. So as the panel progresses, please use the Q&A feature on your screen to submit any questions you might have. And at the very end, we'll get to as many questions as time allows. So feel free to submit your questions using that Q&A feature. Now, before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our sponsors. And I'm going to start with the presenting sponsors, and that would be Bessemer Trust, Keeneland, and Dean Dorton Equine. And our panel sponsors today are the Daily Racing Forum and the New York Thoroughbred Breeders Association. And our Q&A sponsor is West Point Thoroughbreds. And our sincere thank you to all the sponsors for their continued support of thoroughbred ownership. And you can see on the screen the logos of all the different sponsors this year, and we very much appreciate their support. Okay, so we're fortunate to have three speakers today who have considerable experience in these new and evolving technologies. So I'd like to introduce our speakers, and I'm going to start with Dr. David Lambert. Welcome, Dr. Lambert.
Thank you.
And Dr. Lambert is the CEO of an organization called StrideSafe, which we're going to hear more about. Next, I'd like to introduce Fabienne Desir. Welcome, Fabienne.
Thank you.
And she is with the organization called SLEIP, spelled S-L-E-I-P, and we're going to learn more about that. And she is actually located in Sweden, so welcome from across the pond.
Thank you.
All right, next is Ben Bernard. Ben, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Okay, and Ben is with Pin Oak Stud, and he is the founder and CEO of Stable Analytics, which we're going to hear a lot more about. Okay, so welcome, speakers. Let's get started. I've got a few questions I'd like to ask the three of you, and then I know each of you have a presentation that they'd like to go through. So I'm going to start off with how new is this sensor and stride and gait technology? Has it been around for a while? But it all seems pretty new to me. So Ben, why don't you start off, and then we'll ask Dr. Lambert and Fabienne also to comment on that. So how long has this been around?
Yeah, so specifically our technology at Stable Analytics is very new. I started Stable Analytics 2 years ago, and we started development of the sensor less than 2 years ago. And it's sort of been in testing, and internal beta testers have been using it. We've been a part of some studies, and it'll go on the market later this year. So it's very new.
Very new. Okay. Fabienne?
Well, you can say that the idea that SLEIP is based on, which is gait analysis objective gait analysis. It's not very old, but it's been other devices with specifically sensors that you put on the horse, and it has been out there for probably 15 years, and developed, of course. So it's very, I would say it's new in the veterinarian world and new in the horse world, but it's not that SLAPE is the first thing ever produced this kind of measurements. It's how we do it, and that we have involved AI. That is the new thing, making it more easy or simple.
Okay. And Dr. Lambert?
Yes, well, the first time I put a sensor on a horse was in 2005.
Mhm.
In my regular work, I tried to predict performance in horses, and I'd always been impressed how accurate some of the top jockeys could be in their determination of whether a horse was moving well. And so I wanted to try and measure what it was that the jockeys were feeling in their legs and their back and their hands. And the only way to do that was with an accelerometer, we felt. So we were able back then to get some, we got them from NASA actually, that we fastened, attached to the horse, and started to develop an understanding of what the normal stride was and how a horse was able to move forward effectively and efficiently. And that was part of our program throughout the 2020s, the year 2000. And then I was at a conference back in 2018, and met with David Hawke, who had a company called Stride Master in Australia. And he'd had sensors on horses in Tasmania for about 10 years at that time. And he had gathered already 30,000 data sets. So he and I went into partnership. We've since bought out Stride Master, so their IP and all their data is now amalgamated with that at StrideSafe. And we've been using sensors here in America since, for the means of welfare detection, since 2019.
Okay.
So we've been doing it non-stop ever since. One of our sensors is on every horse that runs in Kentucky every day. And so presently we're up to about 70,000 individual racehorse runs.
Okay, that's great to know. Wow. So is Thoroughbred Racing the primary user of this technology, Fabienne?
Yes, I would. No, I think we have both veterinarian. Veterinarian is the biggest users, but we have two versions, you could say. So we do offer it to also other equine professionals, so trainers, physiotherapists, bodyworks, I think called, farrier, and so on. But in the beginning, we were very focused, and we're still very focused on the veterinarians. But we think it can benefit a lot of others professions as well. So that's why we now have constructed two versions. And in the beginning, we were not so focused on the racing world, actually. I think that started coming more when I joined the company, as I used to be a jockey before. So I saw all the possibilities it had. But so we have focused on a lot of different, like equine horses overall.
So different disciplines, show horses, jumpers,
yes,
100
jumping,
jumpers. Okay.
endurance, even. And now we started with Western horses, figured out that they are very complicated breed for sure when they move. I never seen something where you look at a horse and you're like, I have no idea what's happening here.
Okay.
So yeah, we start seeing it all disciplines actually, which is very, very cool. And also breeders picking it up and seeing value of it, but it's not there yet. But yeah, it's
Okay.
spreading. Yeah.
So Ben, is your technology focused mostly on thoroughbred racing, or could it be used with other disciplines?
Yeah, so the physical hardware is not super unique to the thoroughbred industry. IMU sensors specifically, which is really at the core of our hardware, that's been around since the 60s. It was developed as part of the space race. So it's aerospace technology at its core, from a hardware perspective. And then, the best algorithms in the world for, studying that data that comes off of the hardware. All of that is sort of the best algorithms for that data comes from the aerospace industry, and is being developed mostly in the research and aerospace industry. Since then, other industries have picked up the hardware and found use cases. including as a wearable device. And I think thoroughbreds are sort of the last industry in terms of professional sports to start using these sensors
Really?
on their athletes. And so it's sort of, the aerospace industry started it and everyone else is sort of catching up is how I see it. So at our company, we have 3 people that worked at SpaceX at some point, a couple that have worked at NASA at some point. So what we're trying to do is sort of bring that experience from the aerospace industry and help horse racing, catch up.
Okay, great. So Dr. Lambert, you had mentioned a couple countries other than the US. I'm just trying to understand how worldwide is this technology used? Is it something that if you were in Europe or Australia or Asia, that they're also implementing, or is it fairly new to all jurisdictions?
Well, I think America leads the way, I would say, at the moment, and particularly Kentucky leads the way. StrideMaster had their system in use in Tasmania in Australia for about 10 years. That's pretty well the extent of the global coverage. We've actually gone into a partnership relationship with another sensor company who uses their sensor for timing. And we are now adapting their sensor so that we can use their timing signal in our algorithms. In which case then wherever they are around the world, which is in Europe, South Africa, India, Hong Kong, those places immediately open up as users of our welfare and wellness algorithms. We're very close to that, probably just a few weeks away, and Hong Kong will be the first place. They're sitting in readiness to go right now. So primarily it's America, particularly Kentucky, and the world is opening up to different extents, being driven primarily by what their main need is.
Okay, which kind of segues into my next question, Dr. Lambert, and I'll start with you. So to just help us understand, is the motivation of this technology driven by avoiding catastrophic injuries, or is it really designed as a training tool for trainers to improve performance on their horses, or both, I guess?
Yeah, very good. Well, first and foremost, the movement began with this desire to try and prevent limit horses from breaking down, particularly in races. As we all know, there was that cluster of fatalities back in California in 2018, 2019, and that's where a lot of this energy came from to start addressing this particular problem. So that's why we started. My other sensor system had been used in performance prediction, so we understood quite a lot about performance and how horses moved and how that data looked on a sensor. So it was inevitable that we also continued to develop the regular performance information while we were looking at the welfare information. And as I'll say in my little talk, I think this is going to be of particular interest to owners, because now we can provide owners with a mass of biometric information which informs them about all the things all the decisions they're having to make almost on a daily basis with their trainer. So this is going to overlap into the training, into management, and primarily it's going to be, like Fabienne has said, it's going to be a focus for veterinary science. And we're pushing to try and make our data and our information available to the veterinary profession, because I believe this is going to be a new modality for veterinary medicine. There is so much information comes off the sensor. All of it is essentially medical at the base level, and it's going to require veterinarians to look at this information, interpret the information in the light of the symptoms which the horse is showing, and I think it'll dovetail really well with what Fabienne's company does. All this is critical information for her at the trot, for us at high speed breezes or races, all of which can be filtered through the veterinarian, ultimately with informing the owners, so the trainers, so they can make better decisions, and informing the owners, so they probably for the first time become central to the whole decision-making process around owning a horse. So it's come from these outside, all these different places, but it's all honing in to the concern for the overall wellness and welfare of thoroughbred horses and how they can most effectively be managed by their trainer, their veterinarian, and their owner. That's where it's all going, in my view.
Great, great. So before we start the presentations, Fabienne or Ben, would you like to add anything to what Dr. Lambert just said?
That's okay.
Okay.
We can go to the presentation.
Pretty much. Okay.
I think it's
So-
very good presented. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so let's start off with Fabienne. You've got a presentation you'd like to start with, and I think you're going to launch it and share your screen, and then I'll just turn things over to you to explain your technology. So go ahead, take it over.
All right. Share it. Okay.
Okay.
So
Looks good.
we have it on the screen. And
Mhm.
off I go. Yes, so I'm gonna talk about SLAPE, and to be able to talk about SLAPE, maybe a little presentation of what gait analysis is to begin with, and so what it is and why we use it, and then in the end explain a little bit why SLAPE is a good option to use for this objective gait analysis. So a little bit short history here on objective gait analysis, that in comparison to the veterinarian, it's not that old. It started to think about this, how is actually horses moving, for around the 60s. So it's less than 60 years old, kind of. And I think it's interesting that before we talked about space, what the space development has done also for other technicians, and this is actually one objective gait analysis started that someone borrowed a camera, high-speed camera from NASA, to be able to record horses. Because one thing that was realized quite quickly is that a horse trots quick, and the eyes of the human has a bit of a limitation. This means that we have a hard time seeing what's actually happening when the horse is trotting. So that's what happened and why we brought forward objective analysis. So what is objective analysis? It measures the stride of the horse, and it measures if the horse is moving symmetrical or asymmetrical. And what we are looking at when we're looking at objective analysis is not so much how the legs are moving, but more how the head and the pelvic is moving of the horse. So what we're looking at, especially in SLAPE, is a point between the ears of the horse. So we find it here. So it's how the horse is moving its head vertical, up and down. And that gives us an idea of the movement in the front legs. For the hind legs, we're looking at the pelvic instead, especially something we call tubus sacralis. It's in the middle of the pelvic. So even if the horse would say have uneven hips, that doesn't really matter. It's all about that point in the middle that we're looking at. And we're looking on that point, how it's moving up and down. And the important why we just need to know kind of which legs hit the ground when. So for example, for the front legs, when we're looking at the head movement, we're looking at how far down did the head go when the left hoof hit the ground, so at the impact of the left. Then the next step is we look on how high the head went when it's pushing off from the left. Next, we look at the impact of the right front and how low did the head go in that movement. And then we finish off with seeing in the push-off how high did the head go. And for the hind leg.
Fabienne, may I ask at this stage a question?
Yes, of course.
It's some would believe that a good trainer could see a horse's stride and pick out these things. It seems to me that what you're measuring may not be visible to the naked eye, that the technology can see these slight differences that could be a flag. Is that correct?
Exactly. It's the small movements that we may not see with the own eyes. And one other important thing is here that horses that has a big movement, so you have a big movement in their body, it's normally easier to see if something is off than if they have a very small movement. So if we take a Shetland pony and compare it to a big dressage horse, the dressage horse is going to have bigger movements, and so when it's not moving symmetrical, it will be easier for the naked eye to see it. But also something that I'm going to talk about later, we are all people, so we see different things. So some can see a push-off a lot better, and others sees impact a lot better. So we can actually look at the same horse that has two different asymmetries, and we can see the different asymmetry, and we can talk to each other, and I can say, no, it's the front, and I can have someone else talking about the hind, because we're seeing different things.
Very
So
good.
and also, as you say, it's the small changes that is easy to miss, the very small ones. And this is the objective gait analysis. The idea behind it is that it's very, very precise. So you see the smallest difference.
Okay, very good.
And I will go and say, like in theory, which is not typical, but in theory, a horse that is sound is totally symmetrical. I will get back to this, that this is not true, but in theory, that is what a horse that trots symmetrical. And what we mean with symmetrical is, of course, that the head goes as far down on the left front as on the right front at the impact, and that the head go as high on both front when it pushes off. And in the hind, it's of course the pelvis we're looking at then. So we can actually see on this picture here the movement of a stride. So it starts off with push off and on the left, and then impact left, push off right, impact right, and then it goes like this. And this is a very symmetrical movement. We see the head is going the same like height every time, and also down as much each time. And then we see on the symmetrical movement, we see that it's going further down with its head on the left impact than on the right impact. So, and then you see sound and lame, but I will come back to why I'm not saying this is not always true. Okay. But we do compare them when we're talking about objective gait analysis, and when we're talking especially about the small differences, is that we compare how much this changes, the min and the max between the push-off and the impact. So we see how this changes. And I wanted you to see a picture a little bit more of what we're looking at. So we're seeing this video here. Here you can see the head movement up and down, and it's going quite quick here. So, and this is even a slow motion. So then you understand how quick it can go. And this is a horse with a small movement, so it's even harder. And we can start off a little bit because we see more here. So here we have the tubus sacralis, or that pelvic movement up and down, and then we had the head movement up and down. And actually this horse is not totally symmetrical, so if we would have slowed that down even more, you would have seen it a little bit better. But we can see it here, that this head is not going as high on the right side as on the left side. A bit of a quick there, yeah. Let's move on. So that's the basic, very, very simple about gait analysis. And so let's talk a little bit about why gait analysis the future, but also, why it was developed. And I think the objectiveness of this is what I mentioned earlier. So we all see different things, also different horses moving differently, having smaller or bigger movements. But also, I said that the symmetry doesn't always necessarily means that a horse is unsound. And something I think you see on a lot of racehorses, that they very rarely trot symmetrical. But if we can follow them, we can see the changes. So if we monitor them over time, we can create a fingerprint for that horse. And then we can see if they actually are a slight change or big changes. And then that gives us a little bit of help to determine if this horse is actually sound or unsound for itself. like ourselves. I mean, if I would trot in front of this gait analysis, it would be horrible. But I feel sound most of the time. Another thing why it's great, I would say, both for racing, but also for clinicians sharing horses between them or horses moving from different places to places, is that it creates alignment between the vets. Because you create this fingerprint of this horse, you also have vets that see different things. Like I said earlier, someone is seeing the push off in this horse, someone seeing an impact issue, someone is not seeing anything else, anything at all. But with this filming the horse, you get an objectiveness that they can, so that we can all talk the same language, you can kind of say. It's also something you notice quite a lot, is that a vet can say that this horse is a 3 on the lameness scale, while someone else thinks it's a 2. But here you get the tool so they can actually align around it, and the horse can be compared in the same, always be measured in the same way. So you don't go to one track, hear one thing, and then go to another track and hear something else about the horse. So talking about why we want that fingerprint of the horse, one thing is, of course, for training. If you notice that the horse is starting to just small changes, you can maybe stop training in good time before the injury becomes more severe, or maybe just train a little bit different, adapt it to the horse. But I would say that here again, it's like taking the temperature of the horse. If you don't know what the horse normally has or what is a good baseline, it's also hard to know if a high temperature is something normal for this horse or not. So by getting that good baseline and knowing how the horse normally moves, it's easier to take good decisions. Also, what I mentioned a bit quickly there is vets being able to talk to each other and give the same measurement for wherever the horse goes. And so a bit like that.
Okay.
And then I was gonna just continue a little bit shortly with Y-Slape. And I mentioned earlier that gait analysis is not super new. Before there was sensors that you put on the horse. But with Slape, all you need is an iPhone or a phone, and you film the horse and you get all the measurements back. So you don't have to put sensors on, especially horses that may be a bit sensitive. It also bring along the sensor, not forgetting them. No, they slip off the horse, things like that. So it makes it all a little bit easier. We also offer this easier overview, so you can get a trend graph, seeing how the horse looks, if it changes or if it looks the same, if it's in its movement pattern over time. Another thing we offer that has been used also by a lot of regulatory vets is that you can invite others to record a horse for you. This means that you don't have to always be with the horse to actually get measurements from it. So you can invite the owner or trainer to record the horse at home, and then you get the full measurement from that recording without having to be there.
So would you recommend the phone always be on a tripod to have stability?
We used to say that, but nowadays, because the phones are so good, or the cameras in the phones are like compensate for the unstableness, you tend to not need it. It's more if you have an older type of phone, but it's always good to keep it as stable as possible, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, sometimes if you're doing a lot of horses, it may be easier to just have the phone on the tripod. So
Okay.
I think it depends on the user, how they like to use it.
So how many of these recordings would it take to get a fingerprint baseline for a horse?
Well, I think it depends on the horse, because some horses are a bit wonky, but maybe if you know the horse seems to perform well and so on, 4 once a week, once a month. But then if you start recording the horse when it's not well, of course it's harder. What is a good baseline? And we tend to look at a horse, if it's performing well, that maybe it's sound, but if it continuously show the same measurements 4 or 5 times, it's probably correct. if it's not that we know that the horse is lame, or we started recording it where during rehabilitation or something like that, of course.
Okay.
Another last thing mentioned to why SLAPE is a good thing. It's really easy to share results between vets, to owners, to trainers, whoever you want to share it to. We have PDFs, but also web links. And when you share a web link of a result, you also get the videos. And I think it could be very important to see the video as well as the measurements, because sometimes horses are being horses and they do, and maybe they're a bit fresh or they're jumping around and you get a bit weird measurements. And then you can actually go back and see the video and see what happened during this time. What did I get these measurements from? Could this be a measurement I just discard? We say, no, we don't care about that one. We see on the video that the horse is a little bit all over the place. So things like that.
Okay.
To not drag it too long. Okay, some last slides here. Just wanted to mention that SLAPE now exists all over the world. So we have vets and regulatory vets and also trainers and some farriers, physios using it. I mean, almost all over the world. You see, Africa is not so much covered, but otherwise starting to spread.
Very good. Okay.
Yeah.
And
then
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. And last thing, maybe because we're talking about racing, so how does it look with SLAPE in racing at the moment? We have a lot of regulatory vets using it, and how they use it is for race exams. They also use it to work off horses from the vet list. And something what I mentioned before, that you can invite others to record a horse for you. So something a lot of these bigger racing organizations, they did it for breeders this year. They done it for Hong Kong Cup, Saudi Arabia Cup, and things like that. They invite the trainers to record their horses 3-4 times before coming over. So they get a baseline of the horse, how it normally moves, so you get a more fair measurement when it actually gets to race. They also, I know, have said to a couple of trainers saying, I know that Hong Kong has done this, and Saudi said to some trainers, if you're traveling with your horse and it looks like it has been looking at the videos this last couple of times, you will not be allowed to race. So don't put your horse on the plane and pay that money to come over here just to get scratched, which is fair. And I think it's quite nice to save some money before you actually arrive.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I also know there's this famous horse going around the world. He has a lot of SLAPE recordings of it. It has some funky movement in the hind, but it's allowed to race everywhere because everyone knows it keeps moving the same way and they can see the previous measurements. So it's actually shared between a lot of organizations.
Okay.
So it goes both ways.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. And then we talked about private vets helping monitoring horses, but also something that SLAPE actually started for was evaluating lamenesses and help targeting which is the actual lameness and what is a compensatory. I won't go too much into it, but horses have what I say normally 2 legs too much, which makes it all the more tricky. And then, of course, talking about trainers being able to monitoring their horses, see if they can if they should change training, maybe rest the horse when it's time to call out the vet. Also share to their owners, maybe why did we scratch the horse this time? Why are we racing here and why aren't we racing here? And so forth. So keeping the owner a little bit more up to date what is happening with the horse.
Good.
All right, that's it for me.
Okay, well, thank you. Very, very informative. Okay, and we'll have some questions for you at the end. All right, so why don't we stop sharing that? And Ben, why don't we jump over to you so you can spend some time talking about stable analytics?
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. Can you see my slides?
I can, yes.
All right, so let me tell you about Equigraph. Equigraph is the name of the sensor system developed by the company Stable Analytics. And you probably haven't heard of it before. We've done 0 marketing up to this point. We've had a couple beta testers. So Pin Oak has been using the sensors for about 1.5 years now. We've had a couple other volunteers as well. But outside of that, you're about to see some things that no one else has seen before. So if you're on the webinar, nice, you'll get to see this before anyone else. And by the end of this year, we'll be releasing this as a general product for anyone to be able to purchase and use.
Okay, so you saw it here first. All right, go ahead.
There you go. So first, let me tell you about the hardware. When we designed the hardware, we had the trainer and the end user in mind. We try to make it as simple as possible to use, because if it's not dead simple to use, you're not going to use it, and then it's useless. So if you can see my camera as well, I'm holding a sensor in my hand. What you're seeing on the presentation is 6 sensors sitting in their charging station, and you're seeing 1 sensor on the right inside of a pouch attached to the girth. So that's where the sensor goes. It's this small handheld device that can fit in the palm of your hand, and it attaches snugly to the girth. We think that's really important, that it's not sort of flapping around or loose on the horse. We want the measurements from the sensor to be as close to the measurements of the actual horse as possible. So it sits dead center, tight on the girth, on the chest of the horse. And the system is designed to be used every day. We're capturing movement at every gait, at walk, trot, canter, gallop, low speed, high speed, and we're monitoring whether the dynamics of the horse, whether the movement of the horse is changing or staying the same over time. That's from day to day, from year to year. As often as you use the sensor, we'll be tracking if the movement of your horse is changing at all. So maybe with the goal in mind of predicting a lameness or predicting injuries, not just catastrophic injuries, but minor injuries as well. And there might be a horse where you look at the trot and looks sound, but we're measuring something at the gallop, and we've seen in data before that when a horse starts to move that way at the gallop, an injury tends to follow in the following weeks. That's sort of the goal in mind we have, and the use of the sensors. But like I was saying, we try to make them as simple as possible to use. So it's just a small device that can fit in your hand, and you put it on the girth. It just becomes a normal part of the everyday tack. There's an accompanying smartphone app that you use to just click start and stop before and after the workout. And when you're done at the end of the day with all of your workouts, you simply plug the sensor into the charging station. And that's what you see on your screen, is 6 sensors plugged into their charging station. Once they're plugged in, overnight, the data will download and automatically upload to the cloud, where our algorithms will begin automatically processing the data. And once that data is processed and ready, the results will be shown on your smartphone app. But all you have to do is just plug it in, unplug it, put it on the horse, click start, click stop, plug it back in. That's all you have to worry about.
Okay.
So I'll show you a couple screenshots from the app. Show you a couple features that we have on the app. So on the left, you'll see what's just a list of a user's horses. So it's basically they've added their entire stable, and this is where they will monitor the results of each horse. In the center, you will see a user that's managing, making some recordings. So the standard way a user will use our sensors is at the beginning of the day, they'll enter the set list for the entire morning. And as you see on the screenshot, it looks like there's 3 horses in set 1. All you need to do is, click set 1, click each horse that's in the set, and then click which sensor you want on each horse. Then you click start, the sensor start. You can go do something else, leave your phone at the barn, the horses do their workout. When they return, you click stop and you're done. And optionally, we've added a feature that you'll see in the screenshot on the right, where if you'd like to, you can use a microchip scanner, scan the horse, and then scan the sensor, and it will verify using the microchip that the correct sensor is on the horse you intended to be on.
Okay.
So once you've plugged in your sensor and the data is downloaded and processed, the results will be automatically displayed on your app. And you can go click through any of your horses at any time and see the most recent analysis. So in these screenshots, first on the left is our risk index. Basically, this is a score that takes in all of the different outputs from the different algorithms we're running on the sensor data and coming up with a final score, a risk score for your horse of whether or not we think they're at increased or decreased risk for an injury over the next 2 weeks. And so this is just a score from 0 to 10 with different thresholds indicating a red or yellow or green. And then each color and each number are associated with a higher or lower probability of getting some sort of minor injury within the next 2 weeks. And that could be something just like shins, or it could be a catastrophic injury as well. Yeah.
So it doesn't pinpoint where it feels that the injury could occur. Does this give then the veterinarian, the trainer, at least an idea that, hey, it's time to look a little bit deeper?
So first, we've just focused on any type of injury whatsoever. Anything that's musculoskeletal related that could take a horse out of training for 2 weeks is flagged as a potential injury. So we're not trying to pinpoint exactly where the injury is. We're just trying to flag that, hey, something about this horse has changed the way they're moving, and historical data has shown that when a horse starts moving this way, some sort of injury tends to follow.
Okay, so it gives them a red flag saying it's time to look a little deeper.
Correct. Okay. And we participated in a study with the AAP over the whole year of 2025, in which over 100 horses, 2-year-old horses, used our sensors throughout the year. We made predictions, we gave these flags to the AAP, and they recorded them every single week and monitored which horses got hurt, and doing this as a way to validate whether or not this gait risk analysis that we were doing, whether it was correlated to injury or not. And hopefully those results will be published soon.
Okay.
And then we also do some other things. So timing, as you see in the middle screenshot, the sensors have a GPS unit on them as well. So it can do your standard timing of workouts, and all of this is done automatically. It detects when the horse starts moving fast enough for it to be considered a breeze, and it will measure the distance of the breeze and time it, as well as give you furlong splits. So it'll give you fractional timing at each pole throughout the workout, as well as measuring the gallop out. And all of that will be sort of displayed in the workout section of the analysis that you see there.
Okay.
And lastly, we know people sometimes want to keep their data private. Sometimes they want to share it. Sometimes users are working together. Maybe there's multiple people in the barn that might be using the sensors. So we create this collaborate section that allows you to give access to other Equigraph users, whether that's access to just view the analysis, or access to actually make recordings on the horse, or to do both. And then we leave that up to you as a way to just share information about the horse and be able to collaborate on actually putting the sensors on the horses.
Okay. there another slide?
Yep, that's the end of the presentation.
Okay, great. So we're going to go ahead and move over to Dr. Lambert. And while he's bringing up his presentation, just want to remind the audience, if you have a question for any of the speakers, just click on the Q&A feature and submit it, and we'll get to those here in a little bit. So Dr. Lambert, if you'd like to move forward.
Very good. I believe somebody's got control of my slides at your end.
Okay.
Yes. Happily work away. Good. All right. Well, this is all fascinating stuff. I'm so pleased that all these things are happening for our horses and to make their lives better. When I get to make these little talks, I try to think of who the audience is going to be so that I can address it specifically to the way in which they interact with horses. Bottom line, of course, is we all love horses. That's why we're in it. You wouldn't be on this webinar right now, spending your afternoon watching all of this, if you didn't love the horses. And we hope that that spirit runs through everything that we do, because we firmly believe that if all decisions in racing were made with the welfare of the horse at heart, then many of our problems would go away. If we can just get the culture of the industry overall to head in that direction, then we're on a winner. In this particular talk, talking to owners, you must therefore, by definition, be business people. So I'm going to slant this a little bit towards the business type thinker. So in any business, you've got a problem that shows up. They happen all the time. And you want a solution. But you do want that solution to be sensible, to be proven, to be real before you act upon it. It has to be well thought through, and it has to be documented. We've taken that approach here. We had the problem, which was going to be welfare of horses and horses breaking their legs. We had faith from work that we'd done back from the early 2000s that sensors had the possibility of being able to detect when horses were going to be in trouble. We felt that that could be an answer, but to get the solution and to be in a position to ask trainers and owners to act upon it, the information had to be credible. So we've been very, very patient, and we've gathered data all over the place, 14 different tracks, 6 years, nearly 70,000 cases now coming up. And it's only after you've done this kind of volume of data that you can really, or that we felt, we could really be confident in the results that we were looking at. We were particularly focused in catastrophic injury because that's the big challenge that racing was facing. But before you can study catastrophic injury, you have to have data from horses that have suffered a catastrophic injury. And that's hard to get with one race every 1,000 having a fatal injury. It takes a long, long time to get enough data to be able to analyze it properly. We're now into several hundred cases, and so the analytics that we use, the algorithms that we create, and more recently now the artificial intelligence that we're able to apply, has got something solid to get its teeth into, so that we then have valid statistical information that we can present to the owners, the business people, the decision makers, as it were, that they can act upon this information and do so comfortably and relying upon the information being valid. We've also published a number of papers in peer-reviewed journals so that the academic community has had the opportunity to look at our data and make sure that, yes, indeed, it is true. We've got studies now underway at 3 different universities, all using our data to develop projects that they too are interested in. And then we have another 2 or 3 papers that are in the process now of getting published. So there's we've opened our data up to a large number of researchers and universities for them to validate it, because we must be able to turn to our owners and our trainers and say, this is accurate, this is valid, you can indeed act upon this information. The other part of business that's interesting in the horse business and for horse people is we must keep the buzz alive. This is a very, very exciting business, and it takes us over with our thinking. how we commit to it. So I'm going to try and show you too how information from sensors empowers the modern owner in a way that's never been experienced before. And I hope that you'll find this to be exciting, because it puts you right in the middle of the day-to-day decision making. So if you could flip please to the next slide. I'll just show you the nuts and bolts just to get through this quickly. So again, as an owner, as a business person, you like to know the nuts and bolts. That's our sensor. You can see the size of it. It fits where that little arrow is in a pocket in the saddle cloth. You can see the facts about it. Weighs 100 grams, fits in the saddle cloth. It's got a really accurate GPS system in it, and it's measuring forces side to side, up and down, and front to back. And it's doing that about 800 times every second. So that's the guts of where the information is coming from, and the guts of the hardware. Next slide, please. So this is what it looks like when you see it printed out. Again, just to give you a feel, I'm trying to give you now a feel for the nature of the problem, so that you can see and make your own mind up whether it looks like a solution is in fact credible, and whether it looks like there's going to be information there that yes indeed you will be able to use in your daily decision making. So this is data from just one stride taken out of races. This one actually is, it's an average of 38 individual grade 1 winners running at 11.8 seconds a furlong. Let's just put in some details on it. So the stride starts on the left. The first part is the hind limb stance phase. And then the second part is the front limb stance. That's when they get off their back legs, they get onto their front legs, they travel over their front legs, lift the legs off the ground, and then you get the airborne phase. So you've got those three basic phases, and the different lines are measuring the forces in the different directions. So I don't know how well it's showing up on your screens, but the movements up and down are the blue ones. The movements back to front are that orangey brown color. If it's negative, it's a push, and if it's positive, then it's a brake. And then the medial lateral is the green one, and if it's negative, then it's to the right, and if it's positive, then it's to the left. So the horse lands on his hind legs, pushes himself onto his front legs, gathers himself up, and then goes up into the air. And when he's in the air, he makes a lot of movements to steer himself and correct himself and get ready for the next stride. So there's a certain appearance that needs to be to show that the horse is balanced and moving well. Next slide, please. So this now gives you some sense. I'm trying to give you a sense here of, is this likely to be a way to solve a problem? So what I've shown you here, number A is that grade 1 slide again. Slide B is a $10,000 claimer stride, and stride C is a horse that broke down. He actually broke his leg. That was taken in a grade 3 race, and he subsequently broke down the following week when he came out and went to train. So the things I want you to notice here is A and B are very similar. So that's between a sound grade 1 and a sound $10,000 claimer. But when you look closely, they are different. So you can see that the hind limb stance on A is about 40% of the stride, and on B it's 30-some% of the stride. So straight away you have a difference. So as a business person, as an owner, you know now that there are differences between grade 1 strides and $10,000 claimer strides. So that can be used to your advantage in your management of your horses. This is a critical piece of information, because in 1/100th of a second, a horse has moved about 6 inches. So if you lose 1/100th of a second on every stride all the way around a mile race, you've just cost yourself 14 lengths. So 1/100th of a second is a critical amount of time in the efficiency and the profitability, if you like, and the success of your racehorse. And so you need to know things in 100ths of a second units. Now, it has been pointed out already, that's way beyond the capability of a human eye or brain to sort out. So this should be intriguing to you owners. Hello, there's something coming along here giving me information that nobody can see, and it could make 15 lengths difference in a race. That's a long way. I might need to dig into this a little bit. And then stride C, I wanted you to see how haphazard that is. Look how awful that is, how completely different it is. That defines the nature of the problem. Horse A is sound, horse C broke a leg and required surgery the following week. So that's the essence of what we're chasing after, trying to make a distinction between C and A and not get thrown off by B. Now,
So
in
could I ask
reality,
Dr. Lambert, could I ask on the graph C,
yeah,
so the graph there, was that taken before the horse broke down?
that was taken out of a race, a grade 3 race in which he ran third, I believe.
And so should that have been a signal to the trainer and the owner?
So that's a
To
signal.
not move
right there.
forward.
Yeah, what I'm trying to show your attendees is for them to see how very, very different C is from A. And that defines the nature of the problem. That's the essence of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to measure, and how we're trying to give information to the owners and the trainers. So
And sadly, you said this horse did break down shortly
yeah,
after.
he had surgery and survived the surgery, but he did break down. Yeah, just the following week when he went back into training.
Okay.
So this is the point here, though, is for your owners in their mind to be thinking, is this stuff credible? Can I believe this? Is this something I really need to get involved with my operation? And what I'm trying to show you there is that's the nature of the problem. It's obvious that there's something going on there. So it's worth looking into, guys. It's worth studying this a little bit because that's the nature of it. Now, some of them are far, far less obvious than that is. And it takes a lot more information to sort out the fine ones. But underlying all this, that's what we're trying to sort out. Would you put the next slide up, please? So a big important thing here was it must be credible. You must know it's going to work before you act upon it. So this just shows you what we've done. We've got, when I wrote this slide, 68,000, it's over 70 now. We've been on 14 tracks. We've been on all surface. When you add up all the data points, that's 17 billion. And there was over 143 horses in that data set, which actually died while carrying a sensor. And for those, most of them had an average of about 5 runs that we had data on prior to the fatality. So that's the type of data, the type that you need in order to go digging into it to see if you can see something coming before the fracture actually happens. Next one, please. So this is the kind of thing that our trainers get the day after a race. We mark them green, amber, and red. It's a convenient way of communicating to people, traffic lights kind of thing, or people know how to act to that. You see it every day, and hopefully you know what it is when you see it. You don't want to see it, but you'll see that on your car, on your dashboard. When a light goes on, you know what to do if it's red. You know what to do if it's amber. So this just gets the general information across quickly and easily to owners and trainers. The red flags, the danger flags, have different degrees of risk. And you can see there that we've given each one a risk factor. That's normalizing everything to the sound. Green flag horses, if we call them 1, then a 2 is 2 times more likely. A 3 is 10 times more likely to suffer a fatality, a 4, 30, and the red flags, if you get one of those, it's 130 times more likely to have a fatality, a musculoskeletal fatality. And our data, when you look back on it, says that 80 to 90% of the condylar fractures and the sesamoid fractures of the front legs, which is the majority of the injuries that we see, are found in those categories 3 to 5. So then we need to know, can you put the next slide up, please? We need to know what the distribution is. That's what happens every day, right there. It's actually improved now again since we did that. We've got the bad reds down in Kentucky to less than 1% at the moment, which is great. But that shows you the distribution of the flags. At the end of the day, if there'd been 100 horses run, 2 would have got that bad red, 3 and 10% would have got the other reds, 20% the ambers, and 65% of them are basically okay. Now, that is okay in terms of a fatal injury. This is not okay necessarily in terms of general soundness, because this isn't measuring that. Now, it is measuring asymmetry, like has been mentioned earlier. So 20% of the horses running every day in amongst this 68,000 starts, 20% are showing some degree of asymmetry. But I think as owners and trainers, we know this. We know that these are athletes. They're on the edge all the time, as are all athletes. There's aches and pains, there's little things going on. And indeed, that's the finesse of being a trainer and the finesse of being a racetrack veterinarian. What do you do about these things, these athletic types of aches and pains that are not in and of themselves critical, they're not in and of themselves harmful to the horse necessarily, but they're there in the data. And we need to be watching them, and we need to be right on top of them, because we don't want them to get any worse. But that's the nature of the racing population in the United States. Next slide, please. So we talked, I showed you earlier on that slide, how just a few percentage points, 2 or 3 percentage points different in hind limb stance time could give us a difference of 15 lengths over a mile race. So there's all kinds of additional information available from these analytics. We've been able to study hundreds of horses which had 120 day off. And looking at the races that they ran prior to that long period, we could indeed detect patterns. So we've developed an algorithm which reflects attrition. And that's the likelihood that the horse is going to need 120 days off in the not too distant future. This, we feel, is a critical piece of information to the owner. You need this. Is my horse in need of a rest? And is he deteriorating and going more and more and more in need of a rest as time goes by? And how do I manage him? What is that risk? So the attrition and the need for a rest is important in caring for a horse and in managing for a horse. We've also got about 33 cases where the horses died from this exercise-associated sudden death, which is primarily heart attacks. So we've now been able to develop an algorithm for that. This is going to get published in the veterinary publications fairly soon now, perhaps within the next couple of weeks. But we were able to find 80% of the horses which died from a heart attack in only 0.7% of the population. So it's a very, very small group of horses that contain the ones which are going to die from a heart attack. And it would appear that they're showing signs in their biomechanics and in the way they move over time. And it's going to be really interesting to see if Ben's system, because he's doing it every day on all speeds, as you heard. So it's going to be fascinating if these things can also be seen on Ben's day-to-day system and get to them even earlier. We're doing them only in races and in breezes if asked. So this is like a stress test for a person. It's as if every time they go to race, they're getting a cardiac stress test, because if they pass it okay, then the horse is all right. But that's race to race or breeze to breeze. It's not gallop to gallop. So hopefully Ben's system can get in there and catch it even faster.
So Dr. Lambert, we're running just a little bit long. You got a couple more slides yet?
I'm just about I'm finished almost, really. So those are the performance characteristics there that we can address. Flip on to the next slide. I think this just shows you how it's monitored over time. The trainers get these results. That's the longitudinal record for risk factor, the attrition rate, and the heart attack possibility. Flicks to the next one. So yeah, this one, that just shows you more about the horse's performance. This is a grade 1 sprinter versus a grade 1 stayer. And this is the speed at which they're going coming out of the gate. Lots of really interesting information in there, which we had more time. But that tells you the style with which this horse runs. And if a horse runs poorly one day and you do that plot and you see, for example, that he doesn't maintain cruising speed for as long as he was doing, then you know where to go to look for to try and solve his problem. Next one, please. So this is the implication for the owners. Is he sound? Is he at risk? Is he going to need a rest? How's he doing coming out of the gate? What's his early pace, sustained pace, fatigue, etc. Flip on. Next slide. And so that's the punchline. Never in the history of racing have owners ever been provided with so much information, biometric information, right from the horse's body that drives right at the heart of their desire to protect the wellness of their horses and to manage them most effectively. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, no, that was great. In fact, all your presentations, this is all so new, and I just think it's fabulous what you all are doing, and it's a game changer in our industry without a doubt. So I think what I want to do now is I want to jump to our Q&A session so we can get the audience to ask some questions. I have a couple more also that I'll throw in there. So while I sort through the questions, we're going to hear from our Q&A sponsor, West Point Thoroughbred. So stay with us, audience. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Spine-tingling, jaw-dropping, awe-inspiring, Secretariat-like.
So first question, does sensor technology, is it used on race days? And in fact, Dr. Lambert, it almost sounds like the answer is yes, that you're actually using these sensors in the actual race. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, all our data is from actual races. So that's over 70,000 actual runs in races. And every horse racing in Kentucky every day now, and for the last nearly 3 years, has carried one of our sensors. So yes, it's a race day tool.
Okay, so it's not typically used in training, galloping, trotting. So it's typically used during the actual race.
My system is for races, yes. We don't use it in trotting. That's Ben's area and Fabienne's area rather than mine. It can be used in breezes if the trainers want to do them in a breeze. And our next version, which is coming out very shortly, and one of the reasons I bought the Australian company, is we're getting our sensors made in Lexington now, so we can do the standalone system for breezes. We won't do the every day like Ben's doing. We just look at the breezes because we're looking at this risk of fatal injury with super high speed data. Okay, and Ben, you want to add anything to that on the daily use of the technology?
Yeah, we recommend using it every day, at least for our system, because we've seen data start to change at the trot. That's very has good predictive power of upcoming injuries.
Okay, so here's a question for Fabienne. How often would a trainer record a horse's gait to have their gait analyzed? So how often would you recommend that be done?
I would recommend once a week, and I know that there's a couple of trainers already doing that. They line up the whole stable. It's of course, it depends on how much time you have, what you have. It's always, I mean, I know it looks very different for a lot of trainers, but the ones that have the possibility to look at all their horses once a week is really, really good. And just something to maybe add there, you can do it under a rider as well. So you don't necessarily have to do it. You can do it at the same time as someone sits on the horse, so that can make it a bit easier.
Could I add a point there, Gary? At a recent webinar we were in, the trainer Mark Cassie was talking about Fabienne's system, and he told us that he told the audience that he was putting it on all his horses all the way around the country when they were off in different places, making sure they were sound before they were allowed to enter or run. So he was using their system remotely on a very large stable to ensure that the standard of care was appropriate, even though he himself couldn't be at that particular facility. So that I thought that was just great that he can keep that kind of a handle on what's going on and do it numerically by using the SLAPE system.
Sure. Okay. And I think you had said, Fabienne, at least 4 videos to get a baseline, to get that fingerprint
Yes.
on a horse? Okay.
Yeah, I said I would say 4 recording where the horse is actually moving the same also throughout.
Okay.
Otherwise, yeah.
Okay. So here's a question. Can these technologies detect the same data results during a breeze or strong gallop at a 2-year-old sale? So and I know there's been biomechanics around for some time. Are your technology used at all at the 2-year-old sales?
I can answer no, we're not, for Stride Safe. The stride at the 2-year-old sales is very difficult because it's so extreme. Once a horse starts going 9 and 4, 10 seconds a furlong, he changes his biomechanics altogether. So that picture that I showed you of the hind limb stance, front limb stance, airborne, that changes because they then start to get double airborne. They leap from their hind limbs to their front limbs, and they sometimes even leap between the front limbs, between the left front and the right front. And we've even seen cases when they rotary gallop like a pronghorned antelope does. So they change leads every stride. So they don't just go three times in the air, but they change in leads every stride, which is a completely abnormal stride as far as the race is concerned. So no, we haven't got the data or the understanding or the ability to do it as far as Stride Safe is concerned at the 2-year-old sales.
Okay. Ben?
Yeah, they haven't been used at a 2-year-old sale that I know of, but last year, in 2025, as we were a part of this AAEP wearable study, our sensors were almost exclusively used on 2-year-olds from their very first 2-minute lick throughout the end of the year. So we have a lot of data on 2-year-olds, and there's no reason you couldn't use it in a 2-year-old breeze up sale.
Okay. And do sensor technology, does it also keep track of heart rates and other vital signs?
There are sensors that do that. That's not what the echograph system is designed to do. We're focused primarily on movement.
Okay.
But there are other sensors I know of that focus on cardiac health. And
yeah, we're the same. We're like Ben.
Okay. So can you remind the audience what trainers here in the U.S.? I think you just mentioned Mark Casse. Just give us some of the trainers that are using this technology.
Should I start?
Sure.
In the US, as we said, Mark Casse, thank you, Dr. Lambert. I think it's worth mentioning him because he's been the one using it for the longest time and he's using it a lot. We also have Tim Yaktien using it, and Bond Racing. So it's starting to spread, but we have, I would say, more trainer not in the US than in the US for the moment. But yeah, hopefully it's going to spread.
Okay.
We as we said earlier, our sensor is on during races. So every trainer in Kentucky can get the information if they want it. They don't all follow through on it, I must say. We get probably half of them when we call them. If they get a red flag to give them a heads up, we'll get involved in the discussion. But there's still quite a lot who don't. So I'm hopeful that as time passes and the owners become more involved and they see the weight of evidence that's backing some of the conclusions from the use of sensors, that they'll begin to put pressure onto their trainers to use this more. And we're trying to educate the veterinary profession too. That's our intention, to address that, so that we need to have the vets up to speed with all of it. So there's flow through. It's all well and good to get a sensor data, but if you can't do anything with it, then what? So the vets need to know what to do with it. The trainers need to know what to do with it, and the owners need to drive it for the well-being of their horses. But that all takes time, but we're getting there.
Okay, so that kind of segues into the next question. What role, if any, can owners take in getting this technology used more by their trainers? It just sounds like the owners need to kind of take the lead with their trainers if they indeed want to use this technology.
Yeah, so like for Equigraph, Penn Oak Stud has been the primary beta tester during our development, and we've encouraged all of our trainers to use the sensors with all of our horses, and they've all done it.
Okay.
They're happy to, for the most part, they're always happy to try it out and, they're happy to get more information. It can't hurt.
Okay. Do you find trainers are willing to, once they learn about this technology, to use it, or is it kind of a tough group to break into?
It depends. I think most trainers are initially skeptical, as they've probably never heard of it before. But I think once they start using it and they see examples of the sensors picking up things that maybe they didn't notice, then they tend to come around to the idea of this extra information. Like everyone else has mentioned, this technology is all aimed at trying to capture things that the eye cannot see. So we're not trying to replace anything. It's a sensor is just like an X-ray in the way that it captures something that your naked eye cannot see. It's just more information to add to the total picture.
Okay.
Can I add a point there, Gary?
Yes.
From my experiences as well, that there are leaders in the industry, the people who go first, the people like Pinocchio, they've led the way all the time.
Right.
And they'll take it on board very quickly. They'll learn with it. They'll move forward and all those kinds of things. And there are others who just slam the door and they don't want to know. So we have to reach that tipping point when we can turn the whole thing over. And we can't reach that tipping point until we've got enough information, enough clarity, enough certainty, and enough ability to act upon any of the information all the way through. So you've got to have a credible test. When you send the information out, the vets have to know what to do, the trainers have to know what to do, the owners have to be able to see a result, and then it will flow. But it takes a long time to undo that logjam and to get all those human beings all moving. But from the industry's point of view, it's happening. The tools are there, the people are trying, the data's there, it is moving, and these fatality problems are going to go away. If we all just keep doing what we're doing and get behind it, it's going to go away.
Yeah.
That's my opinion anyway.
I also want to add on something there, a shortcut you haven't mentioned yet. I think it's also a question about economy, like telling the trainer, why should you, not especially maybe more for us, focusing on and not just the races, but also the other days. Why should I pay extra to have another tool? And are the owners prepared to pay extra for that? And I think something that is very important for the trainers for all these is to see that they probably will save money in the end when they don't have a horse that they have to operate or is out of business for several years. They may have a horse that stays in the stable for a longer time. They will also hopefully have happier owners that realize that we scratched this horse this time because next time it's going to have a bigger chance and it's not breaking down. We're actually saving money. So I think the economy part is always a big thing in the races. And it's always a racehorse is expensive, and it doesn't matter, especially the bad ones are expensive because they don't earn any money. So it's always that trick of also.
Well, that leads into that's perfect, because that leads into the final question. Is how affordable is this new technology? And you can be as specific as you want or as general as you want. Fabienne, why don't you start?
Maybe it's a good one to take an example of Marcassi that has so many horses, because we are a subscription, so you're not locked into it. But it's around $200 for one device, or we could say one user. So in Marcassi's one of his training stables, and thinking about how many horses he has and spreading out that on a monthly for each horse, that's not a lot of money for being in following up. So, but of course, the fewer horses you get and have, the more expensive it gets per horse, but it's not a super sum in comparison to all the other things you pay for a racehorse.
Exactly,
especially racehorse, I would say.
So Ben, I know you're still in beta. Do you guys have any price points yet?
We haven't finalized pricing yet, but I would like to echo what Fabienne said, is that what's expensive is having a good, profitable horse having to come home to the farm for 90 days. that the opportunity cost of missing those 4 or 5 other races that horse could have run in is very expensive. Whereas if there's any technology out there, whether it be sensors or SLIPE, or whether it's bone scans, x-rays, PET scans, veterinary exams, if anything can turn a 90-day recovery into a shorter recovery, a 2-week recovery, that's a huge cost savings that can really make up for the cost of doing any of those analytics.
Oh, excellent point. Dr. Lambert?
Yeah, we've been so blessed to have the racing facilities in Kentucky support what we've done. Churchill Downs, Keeneland, Kentucky Downs, they got behind this to try and get this thing going. So the price came down to about $20 per run that we were getting for that. That's not really fair, because they shouldn't really be the ones responsible for the welfare of all the individual horses. But it was the only way this thing would work and get off the ground. But the move now and the goal is to try and spread the expense out to the various people who are interested. So there's a piece for the owners, there'll be a piece for the vets, there'll be a piece for the trainer, there'll be a piece for the track, because we're using the horses to measure the nature of the surface and giving that information to the track managers. So there's correlations between the signals and the amount of water in the track, for example, so we can fine tune the racing surface to match the movement of the horses. So there's all these different places that the information can go out to. And so each one, if they pay their little bit, the whole thing becomes very, very cost effective. And there'll be apps for each person to get what they need. Ultimately, what I want to try and do, if I can, because expense is always going to be a problem, I want to get the basic welfare screen for free. I've got a way, if we can pair up with the timing sensor, that because this stuff's all worked out now and the algorithms are all automatic, I hope that we can give it to the tracks for nothing, so that every horse then has a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rating. And from there, then the business can grow and flow, and people have an opportunity to tend for their own horses. But if we can just hit that, then we've got a chance of this going over all the country. And I think we can do it. I'm very optimistic that that's how it'll end up, for free. The basic unit, that's not all of it. That wouldn't be all of it. But the basic, hey guys, pick your head up, there's a horse there in danger. We've got to find a way to make that cost next to nothing.
Well, it sounds
like
we're
a short
well on our
question.
way. Go ahead, Fabian.
Dr. Lambert, now when you're talking about sharing it all over the country, which is amazing, of course, is the plan, or did I miss it, that it should be able to share the results? Like, say a horse run in Kentucky and then runs in New York, that result that maybe it was in a 4 could be shared from the regulatory body in Kentucky to the regulatory body in New York. So when it comes there 2 weeks later and then see this, and they're like, look at the trainer and maybe think again before you start the horse.
That's the goal. That's what we're doing. That's happening at the moment. We've got those longitudinal records. We're trying to see if we can change the regulatory vet situation. Let the trainer, the vet, and the owner all know the day after the race that their horse ran in such a way that he won't be accepted for entry if he stays that bad. If his risk factor's above 50, he's not allowed to enter. That gives them then 3 weeks before the next race to fix it, find out what's going on. And if he doesn't come down again from a subsequent test and he doesn't get to enter, then we avoid that confrontation on race day. We've got to do what we can to stop some poor vet having to face up to some really powerful, influential trainer and headbutt on Saturday morning about a steak in the afternoon, and that vet's only seen it for 10 minutes in the morning. It's a nightmare for the industry, for the vets, for the trainers, for the owners. We've got to get rid of that. Well, the way to get rid of it, I believe, give them the pertinent information long enough in advance of that occasion that everybody has chance to work on the welfare of the horse. Because if everybody's on the same page of the welfare of the horse and they've got enough time, there'll be no confrontations on race day, because everybody will know this thing shouldn't be running, or he's quite well to run. We've got to get to that, I believe. So we're doing all we can to get that by getting longitudinal records going from the different racing authorities to the different authorities, and it's coming. We'll have that done.
Well, obviously, we've been going an hour and 25 minutes. We could probably keep going, but I think it's time to wrap things up. So if you have any follow-up questions for our speakers today, we're going to put their names and email addresses up on the screen, and you don't have to jot them all down now because all of this is recorded, and we'll have the recorded version up later on this week. So really like to thank our panel. Thank you to Fabian for being here. Dr. Lambert, great insight. Ben, best of luck with all that you're doing with your technology. And you got 2 horses going in the Derby. We're going to be pulling for you, rooting for you. So good luck with that also.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank today's panel sponsor, the New York Thoroughbred Breeders and the Daily Racing Forum. But mostly, I'd like to thank our audience for being here and to all owners for investing in our sport. While we have many stakeholders in our industry, it's always been my belief that owners are the most important and necessary participants. So thank you very much, owners. We'll be back in May with a new topic. So until then, stay safe. Enjoy the Kentucky Derby. Again, good luck, Ben. And hopefully you will see you and others in the winner's circle, and we'll see you there often. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.